Welcome to Bridging Two Worlds podcast with me, your host, George the Medium. We will cover all things spiritual, psychic, healing, aliens, paranormal, and more. The aim of this podcast is to stand out from the rest in telling the truth, coming at these topics from a personal angle and discussing many aspects that people don't speak of or know of in these particular fields. Enjoy and welcome. Hey everyone, good day and welcome back to Bridging Two Worlds podcast with me, your host, George the Medium. I want to say thank you for all your love, support and your kindness that you've all shared with the journey of the podcast so far. Thank you so much. The outpouring of love is absolutely brilliant. I have yet another dear friend of mine here today and someone who I work with very closely when I'm doing events, and also someone I can phone and rant and rave like an absolute lunatic when I'm having a bad day, and she'll tell me that I'm being an absolute tube. And tube in the Scottish word is a Scottish word for being so silly and daft. So she calls me more than that, but that's not the kind of words that we would use on something like this. So I would love to introduce you to the beautiful Evelyn Elliott. Evelyn, how are you, darling?
I'm lovely, thank you. And thank you very, very much for asking me. And hello to everyone who's listening.
Thank you. Welcome to Bridging Two Worlds. So Evelyn, I can tell a little bit about Evelyn's background, but she'll do a better job than I would. So Evelyn has been a medium in this movement for, I think, near going on 40 years, and has done training with some of the greatest mediums that have ever lived and been witness to some of the most beautiful experiences. And I know I want her to talk about one of those today in particular. But Evelyn has come up through the days of mediumship being old school, should we call it, to what is, in Evelyn's belief as much as mine, that modern day mediumship needs to come into play. The mediumship movement must move forward and must progress. And I love the fact that, if I can dare to call you old school, Evelyn, that someone as old school as yourself is really, really, really focused and empowered about the movement of mediumship, spiritualism, and so on, moving into the 21st century, really. And I love that about you. So could you speak, Evelyn, to a little bit about your background, like what happened for you when you got into this whole movement?
Well, I've been involved in this movement for a good 38 to 40 years. I've got to say that it's in the family, and it was just a natural progression, to be honest with you. And I've as you said, I've seen the best and had a wonderful time with those people as well, and their training has been superb. I was sort of trained by a very disciplined medium, which I found done me the world of good, to be honest with you. At the time, I didn't think that, but now I look back and I think, well, definitely, because it's kind of molded me and the person I am as well. And, to be confident in your mediumship takes time as well. That takes quite a long time. My background has very much been in a people industry as well, which gives me a bit of confidence with dealing with people in that sense. And I have worked with vulnerable people most of my life as well, which gives you a wee bit of a better insight into what people need, is what I would say. For me, the future in mediumship, it has to change. We have to accommodate the modern people now and young people, and it's about getting more people into our movement is important as well. I do feel very strongly on that, because I went into it quite young. I was only 27 when I tapped the spiritualist church door, and my feelings on that was there wasn't enough help for us. So I'm big on the training for that reason, because I felt that a lot of mediums, and I'll be honest, I felt kept their gifts to themselves and wasn't happy to share. And I'm not saying that for everybody, George, by any manner of means, but quite a lot I found that. So that kind of gave me a determination that I definitely would spend time with the students that are coming in and encourage and motivate them in the best way I could forward. And obviously, you know, the proper training about what you can say, what you can't say, your grammar, things like that. Those are the difficult things because we're not public speakers. We are just ordinary people.
What do you mean by keeping it to themselves? That what do you mean by these mediums?
Well, I found that, you know, when you were asking questions at certain groups, the people that hosted these groups, the trainers, were very reluctant to share their experiences. And I found that some of them, you know, made it difficult rather than easy, personally speaking. And I do think now it may be okay for me to look back and say, well, mediumship is easy, and that's okay all these years later. It certainly wasn't at the beginning. And the biggest fear you've got is getting it wrong. And we're not perfect. And, you know, we do deal and work with them coming forward, and they empower us with thoughts and what have you. So that's difficult for us sometimes to take it apart and give over the correct information. So basically, a lot of people don't like telling you or answering questions. It's not that we're asking questions, we're looking for validation for what we're saying is correct, because if it's not correct, we should be able to go back and get it correct for them, rather than just skimming over it and saying, well, that's fine. If you don't remember, you don't remember. I think it's more important to try and go back and get the correct information for the people. That's what I would say about that one.
Do you think though, because obviously you and I work, we're able to work with alcohol, and I know a lot of mediums are not kind of able to do so. They actually struggle with that as a thing. Do you find though that, you know, I've noticed that, and I'm saying this because I know the answer, but I think it's good for people to hear. I think that we have to sometimes leave things with people because you're given, you know, you've given 8 pieces of evidence in a row and every part of it has been absolutely correct, you know, like, you know, gobsmackingly correct. And then you maybe get 1 or 2 pieces that are a bit not what's in that person's realm of knowledge. So straight away they go, well, no. And so what they then do is they shoot you down. You're kind of on this flow. And it's not that we're here because we're like, oh, I need all the yeses. It's because we want to be right and the information that we are receiving from the spirit world and giving it to you accurately. But I've noticed through us working together so much over the years that what has happened is we sometimes need to say, I'm just going to leave that with you. But you can guarantee, as I've said many a times, how many times do you get a message or an email to say, by the way, and it might be weeks and months later, by the way, see what you said. I remember saying no to you and I couldn't understand. And then they're like, we don't remember because the information passes through us too quick. But there is that thing where, you know, there is that comfort needed. And I think you've got a beautiful way of doing it because you're in with the evidence, and then at the end, you do exactly what Gordon Higginson spoke of, was giving the message at the end to kind of round it off. Do you mind if I ask you about Gordon Higginson? Because I know that you have first-hand experience and I'm very envious of that because I would have loved to have met him. And many people speak of him, you know, they have him as a messiah in the sky. And I think the fact that you're a very honest speaking person, you know, you tell a very, very honest perspective about your time. Do you mind sharing that?
Not at all. I first came across Gordon Higginson at Glasgow Association of Spiritualists, where I went to see him. And at that particular time, I sat in the relevant groups in the church for development. And he was an absolute fantastic medium. His connection to the spirit world was absolutely direct. It was almost as if this man had a direct line. The evidence was outstanding. And certainly, you know, he was a very charismatic character as well, which he drew attention, which was really nice. But he had a fantastic sense of humour. And to me, he portrayed himself as just an ordinary person at the end of the day.
Lovely.
That's what I liked about him. He never forgot a thing. If he had given you any information that you couldn't take, then when you met him the second time, he would be saying, well, did you find out? Come on, you never forgot a thing, which totally amazes me, because I couldn't remember everything. And there was one particular occasion where he had given me information about my family, and he had said that my family at one point, and I think we're going back to the early 50s or round about that kind of time phrase, where they had sat in a development circle in a top flat in Clydebank, which I knew absolutely nothing about. And I went back and I said to my mother, and of course that just sparked her. No, I can't, I don't think, but I'm going to phone somebody just to make sure. And basically she phoned one of her relations who knew all about it and was able to inform my mother that there was a priest sat in that circle when he came over from Ireland, basically speaking. So that was absolutely fascinating. And the next time I met him, he said, well, did you get that information? And I said, I did actually. And I told him, and he was able to tell me the priest's name then, that I hadn't an absolute iota who it was. So I had, and that to me is the best information from spirit, the information that you don't know, that you go away and find out, and then you think, wow.
Yeah. So that's what I always say. This is something that I speak of at events, whether it be live events, church events, or even in private sittings. I use this. I always speak about the don't know. So the information that we look for from the public is a yes, no, or a don't know. And that's to validate the information being correct and incorrect, or you wouldn't know the answer to. And I give the real kind of brief wee thing of, for example, if I said your granny worked in the mill, and if you didn't know if she did or she didn't in her life, then the answer to that would be, I don't know. And I tell that story because that was mine, because my great granny worked in the mill and she passed away. I think she was 72. And there was to that then that I then remember sitting with the family and the priest, and she was Catholic and she was a devout Catholic. She had an I Love Jesus scarf. She actually went to chapel every day, and that was part of her life. And funny, just looking at then learning as I was writing down what they wanted me to say as a talk for her funeral. And it was interesting because I then learned she worked in the mill. And I thought, how on earth do I not know that? But now then the way that I portray it is that they'll give you information that you might not know, because you'll go and ask people. And when you go and ask people, they're going to say to you, like your mother said to you, how on earth did you know that? Because the spirit world then want more believers. That's the intelligence of the spirit world.
Absolutely. Another thing that was a really fascinating one for me was that both Val and I kept getting messages from somebody called Jim, who was part of our family, and we didn't have a clue. And it was quite a repeated message. And I said to her, there's got to be something in this, because we're getting it all over from different mediums. There's got to be some evidence here. And it wasn't until my father died that his sister said, oh, you'll be with Jim now. And we said, who's Jim? And she said, oh, that was my brother. He was killed in the war in the pilot. He was a pilot and was killed, shot down. And, so I've had numerous sort of historical things from spirit that I had to get checked out. And, at the end of the day, when spirit's giving you that information, eventually you'll get the answers that you're looking for, wherever it comes from. But we waited years. It wasn't like months, it was years.
Yep.
And eventually I said to her, I actually, we don't want to take messages that are not for us. But in the same hand, I had a gut instinct that this was something in this. And I just started accepting information, because the information that was coming forward was relevant to what was happening in our life. So that's, I'm never ceased to be amazed by the spirit world. I think it's absolutely fantastic what they can do.
So given that you've had 40 years in the movement, would you say that people now are more, so this is twofold. Are people more accepting now? Yes and no. And then the other part to that is, are they more resistant to the information that you're given? So what I mean by that is, do you find that people back in the day were willing to accept information and take it, as opposed to maybe now where a lot of people want answers to their life? They want to know about their boyfriend. They want to know about their new baby. So I know that's twofold, but
that is it in a nutshell, though. You couldn't have put that in a better way. That is exactly it. Our job is to produce proof of life. There's life after death. There is no death. We are not here to give the fortune telling things. And although you do, and to be fair to us, we do get some of those things that are very accurate as well. But I do believe now, I feel that people want you to tell them what to do in the difficult situations.
Yes.
That they don't have answers for at that particular time or whatever. I do feel that people need you to tell them how to fix things, and that's not what we're about, if that makes sense.
Was it like that, say 20, 30 years ago? Was it as bad as that then?
I think if you're young, you're always looking for answers for the easy road out. I think most young people do, right? But I think, that we learn. I don't think it was as bad as that. No, I don't honestly. I think people were really grateful to get the information from their loved ones, and were quite happy to accept that. I don't know whether celebrity mediums and TV have put a different sort of text on it now, where people are looking for more answers to their life. They don't understand that those answers are learning curves.
Sure.
Right, you need to come up, the answers are within you at the end of the day for right or wrong. And if you make the wrong decision, well, you get your fingers burnt, you severely learn from it. And therefore you won't do that again. I don't know whether, but for me, that's the most important lessons we've got. We don't learn for the good times, we learn for the most hardest times. And that seems to be which gives us the growth.
And I think the wonderful thing about us as mediums is that we have adapted and grown, sometimes not in the best, but we at the end, we have a lesson that we've learned. And I think the good thing about, having good friends in the movement or sitting in a circle, you've got shared experience.
Yep.
And I think when you're a lonely medium, a bit like me in the beginning, and you didn't have anybody, you didn't really know, and I was going to the library and things like that to try and get answers. Whereas, you were lucky enough to sit in a spiritualist church that was booming with people and was busy, and you had the likes of Gordon Higginson coming up, and, and now the churches are dying on their feet, basically. But do you feel that that's I don't think it's because of the people that are out there. I think the young people don't want to be going to a church and listening to multiple hymns and 17 prayers and a spiritual talk. And unfortunately, that's why there's many. I mean, you've had this church of your own, but you led your church very modern, and I don't think that this quote unquote standard churches would maybe approve.
No,
of
they
that.
probably wouldn't.
Obviously, I've got a sanctuary, and it's not opened yet, but the doors are opening soon, probably by the time this is out. But it's also, we're trying to take it forward and trying to make it modern. Do you feel personally that the numbers have dwindled in the churches around? Because obviously we both serve churches based on that.
There's some churches still maintain good numbers. Some churches have fallen away.
Okay.
I don't know whether areas get anything to do with it, or an elderly population that go to the church. I'm not sure about that one. But I do feel that on the general, I do feel churches will die out.
Yeah.
And I do think that we need to move forward and look at that. Where are we going next? And for me, I've always wanted the united front of it all together. So for me, you would be able to get the service, philosophy, and the healing all at the same time, or that's for me, which I think we would be moving forward into centres. And I do believe that most young people have come away from Orthodox religion, so therefore when they hear the service of the hymns and the inspirational speaking, especially if it's on the old-fashioned philosophy, they're completely turned off.
Yep.
And that's quite sad, if that makes sense to you, but that's the way it is, and we need to look at that is no longer serviceable to the up-and-coming younger mediums, basically.
I don't think it's fair that the younger public, and I'm speaking that, without sounding rude, but I don't think the younger public should be given all the power to have all the rules, the rule books, because basically what I think a lot of them do is they want to come in, they don't care about anything other than I want a message and then I'm going to leave. And so it loses even the mediums, the younger mediums who are training, they lose how to hold a conversation, how to empathize with people, how to have the morals and the right ways of approaching conversation. And I think a lot of these mediums, if they're just up there doing a demonstration, there's no healing in that, because it's just given all that. And we know there's a lot of mediums. I suppose the controversial part here that I'll say is there's a lot of mediums who work on the platform who think they're talking to the spirit world and actually are just reading the person psychically. And
yes, that is a fact. That definitely is a fact that we need to look at as well. And that to me is a training.
Oh, it is training. I remember.
And I don't think an awful lot of ones that come into our movement are prepared to go the time to learn properly. They want to work very, very soon, and therefore they don't have the background of the training.
Yep. Well, I use the statement, I've said this quite a lot on this podcast, where they buy a tarot deck on a Saturday and they're a medium website on a Monday. Like there is no time given. Everybody just wants to make money, and I get people are excited when they've got a gift. I really, really do. But also when they come to training with the likes of you and I, and there's discipline in there, they don't like it.
No. On numerous occasions, that's something I've come up against. That then becomes a problem, and there's jealousies and other sort of situations arise. And when that happens within a training group, then you're lost.
Yeah.
Once that happens, you can't train anybody if they've got resentments towards you, because you're trying to tell them how to do it properly, rather than go up there and just give off and talk the way they normally do. That's not acceptable either, because we're dealing with very, very vulnerable people. Some people that come to you have lost their children, their husbands, horrific stories.
Terrible life.
Is what you talk about as the empathy in the message, the feeling that goes with the message from their loved ones.
Yeah.
And that I notice isn't happening with a lot of them. That's what I notice with a lot of the mediums. It isn't happening.
Look at so last night Evelyn read for a young woman at an event we were doing, and the young woman was she was extremely upset, but it was done in a way. She was so upset, but she was laughing because the lady in the spirit world that you had connected to was as close as mum to this. I mean, she basically was mum, even though she was gran.
Yes.
But this lady's grandmother was a hoot and a half, was a laugh a minute, but also was the most loving. But as you were giving the evidence, the whole room could feel the love that was there from this lady, because that young woman was moved, and she could sometimes at points she couldn't catch her breath with being so upset, but also she was laughing because the lady in the spirit world knew what to say at the right times.
Correct.
And so there is the healing. It's maybe not that she's got a cuddle from her granny again, but she's got the words that only the granny would say and the empathy that you gave. But that was because you know how to work with the spirit world well, and there's training and there's background. And listen, we've all had good nights, we've all had bad nights.
Correct.
Gosh, I done a thing for Evelyn once. And I come off and I went, oh, that was rotten. And she went, no, don't be silly. And I went, Evelyn, that was rotten. She went, no, you were fine. And I phoned her a few weeks later and I went, Evelyn, you need to be true with me. I was like, that was rotten. I was like an amateur. And she went, aye, George, you were. You were. She says you had a bad day, son. And there is days
Absolutely.
like that where you just have a bad day.
Correct.
And that's because we are human like everybody else.
Yeah.
There's George before there's George the medium. There's Evelyn before Evelyn the medium, you know?
Correct.
And so there's that. So there's a question I want to ask you that I ask everybody. What have you learned from your experiences? What has Evelyn learned from your experience of being a medium?
I would love to put some of my learning experiences in the bin because it has been a very sore journey. And I have, I think, mentioned this, just things. I like to keep things simple, George, that everybody understands. And I do think that the experiences that we do have are tough on us, and we need to learn them. And what I kind of came away thinking is, well, they've been really, really sore, some of them dreadfully sore, but in the same hand, then that gives you first-hand experience of helping another who's in the same position as yourself. So if somebody came along to me and gave me the answers for that experience, that would take all that away from me. I would have the answers, so therefore I didn't go through the tough time. Right, and I'm not saying the tough times is what we need. That's not what I'm saying, because there's a lot of people don't have as tough as I have or as you've had. I think just at the end of the day, we can be very stubborn people and dig our feet in, and therefore the experience we're having is tougher on us for that reason. Instead of going with it, we fight against it. Basically, that's what I think.
I think you're right, because we, you know, many times of either you and I come on the phone over years and had been going through I went through terrible online hate. I had a TikTok account that grew insanely fast. 3 videos went viral in one day, you know, over 70,000 views in a day. But then the abuse started, but not that the abuse started on me, but the abuse started on others in the comments. These people were abusing other people in the comments. And I remember phoning Evelyn and having this conversation. And I'm a very different person to what I was 5 years ago, if it was a word, if it was something, if somebody had made a fake profile pretending to be me, that destroyed me inside. I was beat. And in those moments, I would phone Evelyn back then and be ranting and raving for days because I'm so upset and having to get over it. But yet the TikTok thing, Evelyn said something amazing. She says, George, did you need it beforehand? And I went, no, I didn't need it beforehand. I've been able to do what I do, and my business has been able to thrive without it. I didn't need it. So what happened? I deleted it that day and I never looked back. But those words from you were the right words. And thankfully we have people, you would be what I would class part of my wee spiritual circle, you know, like that we can look at each other like you would have in a church setting, where you would have somebody that you could reach out to who you're having an experience. And nowadays with online mediumship, you have to be prepared that you're going to get abuse. It's just because people don't believe in what we do. And so within that, I really hope that nobody who's coming up in the movement has to go through half of what we've went through.
I think, you know, 100%. And I do think that when we speak about having a bad night, it doesn't matter what MD tells you, you know that you could have achieved more or done better. And possibly can look to the other reasons why that's happened, whether energy's not as flat or this, but it's our job to raise that. So I'm like you, I can come off and say, well, that really wasn't as good as I can do. And at the end of the day, I agree, it's because we're human. Right? It's because we're human. And I think we need to accept that. And what I've learned in the years that I've been involved, it's been a great asset to my life. I've learned that it's been a fabulous asset to my life, because I've learned so much and I've met so many people, good and bad. I've got to say, good and bad. But see the good people I've met, a lot of interesting people who really aren't even involved in the spiritualist churches, they're life coaches, they maybe write books, just fascinating about how their own spirituality is unfolded.
There's not all that talking to the people in the spirit world.
That fascinates me, how their own journeys are. Personally speaking, for me, I would say what I've learned from it is now that we're all here collectively for the good of mankind.
Yes.
That's the most important thing, that we're here to serve. We've chosen this, whether we like it or not, and we're here to serve. Yes, and we can get absolutely shattered because you're inundated with people who are in great need, with all different stories there. It's no up to us to judge.
Do you find that you're judged quite often by people because of the work that you do? And how do you deal with that?
I deal with it much better now. What I do now is say, well, you know, we all have different belief system, and that's mine. And that doesn't make that wrong. The same as yours isn't wrong for you.
Yeah.
It's all about tolerance, I think. And that's where our world hasn't got a lot of these days, is tolerance for each other, basically. My family's always been a bit like yourself. They have always been that wee bit aware. My grandmother had it naturally. So that's where it started from, basically. Val definitely, as a child, my sister definitely spoke to the spirit world and was terrified of them because she heard all the wrong stories, basically. I never had that fear. One of my things about the movement was that if I'm going to do this job, then I'm going to do it right, because that's who I am as a person. And I need to meet you, and I need to know who my guides are and all the rest of it. And what I would say there was, be careful what you wish for. Because in one particular occasion, where, you know, you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's like, ding, I'm quite buzzing. And there's this figure in the corner of the bedroom, to me looked like Aborigine. And I get out that bed like a bat out of hell, shouting, please don't do that to me when I'm in my cell. But I asked for that.
Of course.
I asked for that. And that, for me, I needed that. Some people are happy to accept not seeing or whatever, they're happy with the information. But I just felt that we deal with the most vulnerable people in society. So therefore, I need to know that these people have got my back as well as the person I'm reading first back.
What's interesting, like you're saying about getting that sign from spirit, people, the general population of people in the world think that what we do is we would say, hey, I want a sign. And within 5 seconds, the spirit world are going to give you a sign. Remember that the soul transcends the physical body, and it's about energy. So, you know, everything in the world has energy in it, you know, from the desk that you sit at to the chair you sit on. So there's energy in everything. And so the spirit world have to take time to make these things work. And like you're saying, you asked for that sign, and you certainly got it, but just not when you, not
when it suited me, when it suited me, you know.
And I think sitting in spiritual circle, if that had happened, it would be celebrated and wow and all oohs and ahs. But no, when you're in your kip at 3 a.m, you know, you literally practically levitate out the bed. And I think that's something that, you know, I wonder about many young people's experiences who are in the movement now. We know we speak about these people who do online readings, and I've spoken about this before, and it's sad because I don't, the background in which a lot of them have is almost zero in the sense of training. You know, I know one of them that sat in a meditation circle for 4 weeks, and the next minute they had a website and they're doing readings online, and you know, they're doing demonstrations, and the words in which that are being said. I know another person that took to online and spoken, oops, my camera, and spoken about how do I say this without getting censored on YouTube? The words in which you used about someone taking their life was basically that person, what they done destroyed the family and it wouldn't heal the family. That's, I know you know what I'm talking about, Evelyn, but I'm just trying to be very careful in how I say it. But what that leads into is the power in the words in which we convey. We have to be extremely careful what we say to people.
Yeah.
We've got a really fine line between okay and oh goodness, you made a mistake there.
Yeah.
You know, do you have any funny stories that you've learned or you've come across? You know, is there anything that jumps to mind that is kind of funny that would people who don't do this and maybe have stumbled across this podcast and thinking, well, this is interesting so far. So have you got any funny ones that you can remember?
No, you've put me in a spot here. I need to use my memory. I've had all sorts of crazy things. I always remember sitting in a circle, and this was something that really did cause me a bit of distress. And we were going over in the ferry to Ireland, and the girl said, just great imaginations. The girl had said, oh, there's a problem on the ferry. Now, I have a problem with boats as it is without anybody telling me there'd be a problem. And I always remember standing in that ferry thinking, well, I wouldn't have been here. I wouldn't be here if there was a problem. She had me sinking in the boat.
No way, did she?
So that, to me, at the end of the day, I kind of laughed it off. But if you think about, you know, the things that people do say to people without knowing, you know, that they have sort of these issues. I'm trying to think of funny stories. Remember,
I've got one if you're thinking, right?
Okay.
So I remember, so this is a good one because this is a lesson in trusting in what you get and also kind of hysterical at the same time. So this lady many years ago had, I was doing a house party and this woman had come in and they were all having a drink in the living room and I was doing these readings and I was very early in my beginning and they were being nice enough, you know, the ladies for the pub, and they were happy to let me do some free readings for them. So that was fine. So I remember during this reading, I could see a penguin. And I remember it as vivid as I'm looking at you now, that I could see a penguin and I wasn't going to tell her I could see a penguin. You're absolutely right. I'm not saying that because I thought she's going to think I'm absolutely off my nut. But as I'm talking to this lady's sister in the spirit world, penguin, 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 penguin. And I was, nope, I'm not saying it. I didn't have the understanding or the confidence on how at that point. And I remember seeing this penguin and the lady pretty much through the whole reading had said yes to everything that was said. And at the end, I'd said to her, how did you find your reading? And she said, oh, it was great, thank you. But I just really wish you told me this one thing. I went, all right, what's that? And she went, my sister was a nun. You know the penguins, black and white? Well, now the nuns wear the habit and they're black and white.
Yes.
So at that moment, I then said, oh my God, I could see a penguin the entire time. And she went, all right, okay. And she wasn't as blown away because I then told her afterwards. It just makes it sound like I just said that, right? But anyway, we kind of had a conversation afterwards and she was laughing and whatever. And she gets up and then she'd realised that the whole time she didn't even know because she was that drunk that she had weed the bed that she was sitting on. She was at this woman's house who were doing readings and she actually weed her bed.
Oh, that is funny.
And I then didn't know what to say because this lady this is a grown woman who's wet herself and she didn't even know. So that shows you how drunk she was and how enough I was able to even get through to her sister and get past any sort of energy with that woman being absolutely drunk. But that story always sticks me. One, she paid herself. Two, trust the information in which you receive. So did you think of any stories or did your mind went blank?
I was doing psychometry once and this lady was in the audience and she came up and she said to me, could you manage to do these, please? I don't know if this is appropriate or not. And it was her husband's false teeth.
No, I was just going to say psychometry is reading the history of an object.
Yeah, it was her husband's false teeth. And I thought, I've read a lot of things and I've felt the vibration of loads of things. But I just wasn't happy to take the teeth.
No, I was going to say, you don't want to be sitting there with a set of teeth in your hand. Did you actually bring, oh my God.
She brought the teeth.
And that, but why would, I mean, is she thinking that that's the closest thing to him and that's why? Oh my God. And what was your response though? What did you say?
Oh, well, if you can give me a watch or something or whatever, I'll try, but I really
You were
don't.
dignified.
I just thought, no.
I mean, at least you approached it in a nice way. I mean, my face would have been at horror. I can only imagine your face when she's whipped out a set of teeth.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
It's totally crazy, but you know, even asking somebody to do that.
I know.
You know
it's
what
what people expect of mediums, I think, is now that I think if we levitated, they still would want more. Yeah. I think that's the most unfortunate part of what we do is that there's so much. I mean, every medium. On you go.
I think there seems to be an awareness out in the public. There definitely is a change for some people. If they had that wee bit of psychic ability at all, I feel that has increased.
Yes.
And with that, I think, you know, they're looking for information that you can't give them, basically. Yeah. Or an awful lot of them as well, like want a specific piece of information.
Yeah, like the arrangement they've made.
And the problem I find with that is, you know, that the spirit don't always feel that information's appropriate either. Mm-hmm. Right? Well, you know, you get these people that do, right, okay, you know, there's a code. If you go and you go before me and there's a code, you say that and then I'll know it's definitely you. That to me is absolutely crazy because we bring the essence of the person through based in love. Mm-hmm. Because that's the vibration that we need to work, that we work in is based on love. And I just think that what do they want by that? I can only talk about my own experience, and I had a really, really good friend, and I mean, we were absolutely really, really close, and he went to the spirit world very, very quickly. And the thing was, he was a very good Catholic, brought up a very good Catholic, and he used to say to me, well, see that hoobie-doobie stuff you do. If I go first, I'll come back if you're right, and I'll tell you. Right. So he passed the spirit world very, very suddenly, and the connection I had with this person was second to none. And I thought, well, knowing him, it'll no belong he's back. Oh no, 7 years. 7 years. Wow. I waited, and it was a medium over in one of the churches I'd went to one night, and she said, "Oh, I've got a guy here for you," and she gave me his character. She gave me information I understood about him, and she said, "The only message I've got for you is you were right." That was it. Wow. And that to me is perfect.
Yep.
I didn't need the code or anything like that. Yep. That to me was perfect. But and I said, "Can you ask him where he's been for 7 years?"
But there you go. Like, so there's what people don't take into account, that us as mediums, we don't have the phone. We can't pick up, and like a mobile phone, you open the phone book, you find the person's name and you hit call. Mediums don't have that ability. And I think, like you said in the beginning, is a really, really valid point, that TV has created this imagery definitely. Of mediums being able to deliver all, like they walk up to people in the supermarket and say, "Is your father in the spirit world?" Now, there in itself is a point. They ask the question. Yes. Do you have a father, grandfather, uncle, or brother in the spirit world? Well, which one is it?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and I think the good thing is, what I always say about the TV mediums is they're never wrong.
Well, that's what I say. That's what I say. You know, so the public don't see the information that's getting knocked out of that. They only see the good information. It's all kind of there's a name for it, and it's kind of escaped my mind just now. So there's a name for that, edited maybe. So there'll be information that would be edited out, and the good stuff would be left in. So therefore, everybody's looking at that and thinking, "Oh, that's outstanding," but they don't see that, you know, what led up to that. And
Exactly.
there is a lead up to good information.
Well, there's a documentary on Netflix called Surviving Death, and there's 2 episodes. Episode 2 and episode 3 is on mediumship, and I know the woman. I don't know her personally. Her name is Nicole DeHaas, and she has always been reluctant to let people in to things because of the delicacy of the work that she does for trans work, and it's trans mediumship stuff that she was doing. So she let the cameras in. Colin Bates was included. Oh goodness, what's the Philip Dykes?
Yes,
was included, and they took the footage unknown to Colin and Philip Dykes, Colin Bates, Philip Dykes, and Nicole DeHaas, that they were going to use the footage and edit it in a way that made them look bad. I found out through, and I've seen Nicole DeHaas work, and she has, out of everybody I've ever seen in my entire life, like you with Gordon, I've never seen anything like it. What she done that night when I was in Holland and I watched her, she was working with John Johnston, another really famous medium in the UK, and the delivery of information that she provided was gobsmacking. Just beyond the generic, again and again. Like, oh my goodness.
yeah.
And then she's in this documentary and they are literally painting her out to be kind of a fake. And I was furious because I've seen this woman work firsthand, and there is no way, and the woman in the audience like didn't know her, and it was just insane information. And then I've got a friend who has spoken to Philip Dykes about it, and basically that Philip was doing a reading in it, and he was made to look that he was struggling. And then actually the rest of the footage shows him that he does connect. The man could understand. And once the connection and the understanding was given, that the reading was phenomenal, and yet they didn't show any of that footage. So I know that depending on how the production company want to push something in a direction, it's pushed to either be in favor of or against of.
Okay.
If they've got the Teresa Caputos and whatever, the Long Island Media, if they've got all that kind of thing, then I would say, and no offense to anyone, I'm not one to be, but I would say that there's questioning within the information. So the way that you and I work is, I have a lady here and she tells me she's your mum, and I know that if she's your mum and she's telling me she's got 2 daughters and a son, like that's how we give, and they then just say yes, no, I don't know. Whereas in the TV land, it's where would you understand the woman who departed? That's the wording they use, and I'm like, so the audience is giving the answer, and then you say, but I know that they would pass quick, and the person you say, they passed in a car accident. So it's kind of like, it's put out there, and I'm not blasting anyone. I just I think if you're going to do mediumship, do it in the way that the likes of Gordon Higginson spoke of, where you give the evidence and the evidence. And so even when you watch his live demonstrations filmed back in the late 80s and 90s, and they're on YouTube, one of the greatest mediums that ever lived is Gordon Higginson. If you watch his way of working, he's giving the information, and I remember somebody put their hand up in one of the audience, and he went, no, I'm not with you, I'm 2 behind you, and I know that because blah blah blah. And it's just like, it's
the best one I ever seen with him was, did you ever watch the video where he brought through the gentleman who worked as a funeral? I think the guy made coffins or something.
Yes, I did.
And I mean, it was absolutely fantastic.
Because they said he was being measured up.
Aye. And the second name, Mr. Scarlett, and he's measuring me up for a coffin. And I mean, you can't argue with that evidence. If you're going to call that man a fraud, there's something wrong with you.
Well, I would like to understand the reasoning for calling it a fraud, on the way. And I really wish Gordon was alive for the likes of people like Derren Brown and whatever else who come out to discredit, what it is that we do, because I think, Gordon Higginson would have had them given a run for their money, really. If I'm being honest.
Definitely.
What is it that what is it that you would say from your experience? I mean, you've worked overseas, and I know you've got a great connection with Germany and stuff. What is it that you would find different with students around the world as opposed to students in the UK? Is there a difference?
Just the language. You've to slow everything down. Basically, it's actually good for you. It's another learning curve. It's very, very good for you, because I actually think that for me, I had to slow my work right down, but I learned quite a lot from that because I got more evidence.
Because you could go deeper.
Yes. And I was talking to Spirit more. Whereas we're going out and we've got a designated time if we're doing the churches of an hour or 3/4 an hour, whatever it is. And you're trying then to get through as many people as possible to give them that upliftment, compassion. So you maybe don't spend as much time as you should with talking to Spirit. Whereas when I had to slow down my work, then I had that time and I was communicating more with Spirit. And as you said, I was getting a deeper connection.
Yeah, because then you're going into that evidence more and exploring it more. Whereas but especially if we're working with alcohol, I think when we're working with a room, you are right, there's a time constraint. We've only got so much of an allotted time to do what we're doing. And then you don't have sometimes the opportunity. I know that, I definitely take longer with people when I'm on the floor anywhere. It doesn't matter whether it's a church or whether it's a live dem. My time, my watch is by the spirit world. I'm not one for, and you're the same, you take as much time as needed. And a lot of places don't like that.
No, I think, George, that there's certain people that, that you can give a wee message to, and there's others who are in great need where you need to spend that extra time with. If it's a very, very compassionate message from a really close loved ones, you can't put a time in that. That's in my book. You can't put a time in that. But there seems to be this discipline of time, and a message should be, I can't get my head around this one. This one for me doesn't work. A message should be no longer than 7 minutes or 9 minutes or whatever. I actually don't find that works for me, because if I have somebody in front of me who really, really needs that extra, I'll give it, because that's what we should be doing. And
I think it's good for students. I think a time for students, between 7 and 10 minutes is good for students, because it teaches them to focus. But I mean, yourself when you're working, if they run on, that's absolutely fine. But also equally in groups, you can get absolute GABA minutes where they're just going to talk. And then the people who maybe are not like that are going to struggle. So that's why there is a good time. But when you're actually professionally working, you take your time where the time is needed. And if other people have a disagreement about that, then that's unfair, because you're not serving spirit truthfully. You're then worrying about the clock. What would you say was your most difficult part of your learning? Obviously we've got the 6 clairs, and we've got, we can be sensitive as a psychic and sensitive as a medium. What was your biggest struggle?
I think my biggest struggle was learning to look at all the likes of, what you were getting, and the great sense that you had, but the mannerisms, I didn't really pay much attention to the mannerisms. And that's a thing that I'm guilty of doing. I mean, I was working with somebody and I was rubbing my hands, which I don't do. And the girl said to me, "My goodness, that's my mother down to a T. That's what she used to do." And I forget about those things. So for me, that was difficult. I also found it difficult to relate back, during the training. I found it really, really difficult to relate back in pictures.
Okay.
I wasn't quite sure about the pictures. I've learned now just to give what I got. But I think then you were wanting to be right. You didn't want to be wrong. There's all those things all come into it. And really, at the end of the day, nothing's wrong. That's what I say to the students, because
It's true.
if they've got that in their head, then they're not frightened to say anything.
Mhm.
Because you know, and probably like yourself, sometimes you missed firm pieces of evidence because it sounded stupid.
Absolutely.
Or
The penguin.
I wouldn't want to give that over. I always
Mhm.
remember one night it was a really, really odd name, and I didn't give it. And when I connected with the chap I was working with, I did say, I don't understand it. And he said, that's the one bit of evidence that just signs it for me. It was a pet name. And our minds kick in thinking, is it a dog's name? Is it
Oh,
this?
aye.
Right, your own mind. And that's the worst thing, is keeping our own mind out of our messages.
Yep.
That for me is one of the hardest jobs to do.
I think you're right, because as soon as you see a sign that of something that the spirit will give you, but it's something that you can personally relate to. For example, if I see a rose, it may symbolize the name, or it might symbolize something to do with the flower, or a tattoo of a rose or something. But my mind instantly goes to my great granny. She was
Yes.
Rosie. She was a Catholic. She had 10
Yep.
kids. She didn't drink. They all drank. You know, my mind then goes
Yeah.
in a way, and that's
Yep.
what Evelyn is meaning by that, is that your mind can go into a complete and utter tangent, we would say, and it would go off on its own wee wander, and allowing the conscious mind really to step to the side to allow spirit to come through is, because mediumship runs through the mind. So this is what most people forget, is that that thought form is there, but also all of that feeling is there, and then all those images. So all these things are happening at once, and then the ones that we don't are not, the skills that are not as strong as the, you know, the hearing and the taste and the smells, we may get glimpses of that. And I'd actually had a lady I spoke to the other night, and she says, oh, I definitely hear the spirit world. And I went, okay. I went, well, I'm going to challenge you on that. And she kind of looked at me, and I said to her, so if you hear the spirit world, you can't get it wrong. So you hear them like objectively outside of
Yeah.
the body. You're hearing them like you're hearing my voice. Yeah, they shout my name at me, and I went, ah. So you hear your name, only your name, or do you hear them actually talking the way that I'm talking? She went, no, just my name. I said, so they're trying to get your attention. I says, it's not that you hear spirit and you hear the conversation happening outside of your
Like,
body, because
yeah.
if you do, then you're part of a very few rare mediums alive on this earth who are able to actually hear correctly.
Yes.
But the subjective part, when the thought is the sound is dropped into the mind, then we're unfolding something more interesting, which
Yeah.
I then say is that I use the good example of, think of the song I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
Yeah.
We can all hear that song in our mind when we think of it because we know the song, but it's not the spirit of Whitney singing to you. It's the thought form. So it's kind of like trying to get people to understand that. And I always find new groups of students, there's always one or two who can do everything.
Yeah.
They can do it all. And when you break it down, then they go, oh. But then it either knocks their confidence or they feel knocked down a peg or two. And
Yeah.
the one thing we're not trying to do is knock anybody's peg off.
No.
We're just trying to say, hey, that really understand how you're working. And I had one student who was just not a medium, didn't have
It
it,
does happen. It does
didn't
happen.
have it, but she believed that she was. And trying to get her to understand that she was a brilliant psychic.
Yeah.
She was on fire that way, but she just wouldn't accept it. She believed, and to this day she believes it. And it's a shame because you try and you listen, you have no control over what they do.
No.
You really don't.
No.
I really have to say thank you. I want to ask a final question to you, Evelyn. What do you hope others will learn from your experience? So whether now with the wisdom that you've shared up until now, or when you pass over to the spirit world, what do you hope others learn from your experience?
I would love to think that those that I've worked with along the years would carry on and not drop the standards. I wouldn't want the standard of what we do to come down, because it has come down slightly.
Yes.
Right? And I wouldn't like to see it coming down that much that it faded away. Because that could happen.
True.
That could happen. If the standard comes down too much, then the public then have this opinion of, oh, that's a lot of rubbish, that stuff. And that negative word goes further than positive words.
It does.
Yeah. So I would hope that the people that have been in the journey with me have learned from me, because I've certainly learned from them, and it's been good. But just one other thing before I go, I was thinking about there. I always remember working in Maryhill, and rough and ready people, lovely people, but rough and ready, you get what you see. And this is what I mean about not putting your own mind into it. I'm glad I done it that night. And I'm working away and I'm giving her all this evidence of her mum and her dad and what have you. And I said to her, all I see is a lovely, lovely, gorgeous stallion. That's all I've got. I had nothing else, right? I said, so I could stand here because I'm nosy and think, what on earth is somebody going to have a stallion in the middle of Maryhill? And I thought, gave her it. And she never said, she took it. She said, yes, that's wonderful, thank you. And she came up to me at the end of the night and she said to me, I'm not going to tell you how. She said, but the stallion, the horse, was the most important thing about the whole message.
Wow.
So she went away and I'm thinking, she still not told me. I was desperate to know where the horse was.
Oh my God.
So it's important that we don't put our own mind into it.
Yep.
Because
definitely.
I come away that night and working with other girls and driving home, and I'm saying, do you know what, that's really annoying me, that.
Why did she not tell you?
It's nothing to do with me. And obviously that was the thing that done it for that lady.
But then even to sum that up, you received a really unusual piece of information that you could have quite easily thought, I don't want to look like a tube here.
Correct.
But you gave the information in which it was, how it was given, and then look at that lady needed nothing else but that.
Aye. You know,
even though you gave her loads, she didn't need anything else.
No, that just rung it for her. Maybe I might find out before I go to the world, but who knows?
I know.
She might listen to this and
tell you. Exactly. Evelyn, thank you so very much for being part of Bridging Two Worlds podcast.
Absolutely loved it. It's been great.
Thank you. It really has been. And I hope that people can learn. And I think today is really about the growth of the movement. I think we've really stumbled on something that must speak true to both of us. And I know it does, but for it to come up so much in the conversation, the growth in the movement and how we hope that it will move forward, being that we're part of it, hopefully we'll make a small change for the better. I would like to hope and pray that that's the way it is.
The one thing that I think it's just spot on, and you have been with Mavis Patilla, so you'll have heard her mention this. And she stood up and she said, she was given an interview and she said, the most important thing about being a medium is you always work from the soul level. That very much resonated with me. And that's where I'll leave it. It's important.
Thank you. Evelyn, how can people find out about you? How can they contact you? What's the best way to get in touch?
Well, I do just my ordinary Facebook page. I'm not like you, George. I don't have all these lovely aspects of the internet because I'm useless. So I have Evelyn Elliott Medium, and I work through Soul Sister Scotland as well.
Which is a page you have.
A Facebook page as well. Yep. And we do, as you know yourself, we do a Wednesday evening service, Zoom service. And that's a free service for everybody who wants to join us. Quite happy. Perfect. And for anybody who's listening to this that is a trainee, then the second half of that Zoom service is used for trainees, and I would love you to come and work. Absolutely love you to come and work.
It's a brilliant time because it's a mixture of mediums and non-mediums and
Yep.
trainees, and everybody is given the energy to support these people. And it's a brilliant thing that you do
Yep.
to give people the chance. And one of your newbies actually got me, and God, she did a tough one because I'm very, very strict. She done very,
She
very
talks
well.
about it. She said,
Does
I
she?
can't believe that our first message on that kind of thing. It was a really professional medium.
And she done amazing. She
Absolutely.
was amazing. She's got a good career ahead of her, that girl.
Lovely.
She
A
really,
lovely
really
girl
does.
as well. Lovely.
I'll leave all the info for your pages below in the description and stuff, Evelyn, or when I upload everything. So I want to say thank you for
And
being
thank you. I've really
blessed.
enjoyed this, and I was kind of nervous coming on because it's not a
Oh,
thing I can do.
Yep.
But I thought I must get it and send it to Lynn, because she does this often, and she'll give me the lowdown about what, no, you need to do this differently, and you'll need to do that. She'll be calling us fit to burn. We're not doing it right.
Just like we said, we about being critiqued, and there she'll give the honest answer.
Aye.
Thank you, Evelyn. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, George.
Have a lovely. Take care, everybody.
Right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.